The 9 a.m. chime on Arthur Coleman's desk clock was deafening in the silence, a sharp digital reminder that the German translator's chair was still empty. Arthur, his face already red beneath a sheen of sweat, slammed his palm on the polished mahogany table. "I pay people to anticipate," he roared, his voice echoing off the floor-to-ceiling glass. Opposite the windows, a wall of dark wood held the company's history. Black and white photos of his father shaking hands with politicians in the 80s, of factories humming in the 60s. Those images of solid, predictable success seemed to mock his current panic. His young assistant, Sarah, flinched, clutching her tablet. "His flight from Frankfurt was cancelled, sir." "The weather." "Weather." Arthur scoffed, ripping his tie loose from his rumpled, 90s-style power suit. "Excuses. A billion-dollar deal, and I'm surrounded by children." In the corner, by the towering windows overlooking a cold, gray Chicago, Naomi Washington busily arranged coffee cups. Her movements were so quiet, so practiced, they were invisible. She wore a simple, gray work uniform, her 50-year-old face dignified and observant. As she overheard the panic, her lips almost imperceptibly formed the German word for trouble, Schwierigkeiten. She had just finished refreshing the water pitchers when Arthur noticed her. He didn't look at her, but rather through her. "Get out," he barked, waving a dismissive hand in her general direction. Naomi nodded silently and began to push her service cart, the symbolic mop, toward the service exit. But before she could reach the door, the main elevator chimed. The Germans. They were early. "They're here," Sarah whispered, her face pale. Arthur froze, then whirled on Naomi. "You," he snapped, his voice cracking. "Just stay in the corner. Don't make a sound. Don't move." Trapped, Naomi had no choice but to push her cart back into the alcove, her invisibility now a command. As Arthur frantically straightened his suit, Sarah, trembling, caught Naomi's eye across the room. The assistant gave a tiny, apologetic wince. Naomi, her expression calm, gave a slow, barely perceptible nod of understanding. The heavy glass doors swung open. Frau Schmidt and her Haas entered, the picture of German punctuality and precision. "Guten Morgen," Frau Schmidt said crisply. Arthur, sweating, forced a wide, unnatural smile. "Guten, good morning." "Bitte, sitzen." His pronunciation was a disaster, turning a polite invitation into a butchered command. The Germans exchange a brief, subtle look of annoyance. From her corner, Naomi Washington closes her eyes for a second, wincing at the CEO's butchering of a simple command. Arthur just embarrassed himself, and you could feel the tension in that boardroom. Naomi winced because she knew, that's the kind of detail we love. If you are still watching and you felt that moment of secondhand embarrassment, do me a favor and comment with the number 8 below, just so I know you're locked in. And if you believe, like we do, that these stories need to be told, make sure you support the Black King channel. Please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Your support is what allows us to create and share these powerful moments that inspire and inform. Now, let's see what happens when Arthur tries to handle this himself. 10 minutes later, the only thing thicker than Arthur Coleman's Chicago accent was the air of mutual misunderstanding in the room. He was sweating profusely now, powering through a presentation that was clearly useless. The glowing charts on the screen meant nothing. "The Zukunft," Arthur said, pointing vaguely. "The future is very gut." His pronunciation was painful, grinding the German word into gravel. Frau Schmidt and her Haas sat stiffly, their hands folded on the table. They had stopped taking notes. Her Haas leaned slightly toward Frau Schmidt and muttered in sharp, low German, klingt wie ein Tourist, der Brot bestellt." He sounds like a tourist ordering bread. Frau Schmidt didn't smile. She replied dryly, "Und das Brot ist alt." And the bread is stale. In the corner, Naomi's hand, which had been polishing a glass, paused. Her back straightened. She could feel the heat rising in her own cheeks. She glanced at Arthur, who was still smiling, completely oblivious, already clicking to the next slide. This one, she noted with a silent wince, featured the wrong German flag, a subtle, ignorant mistake that spoke volumes. Arthur, sensing he was losing them, skipped to the financials. He fumbled, losing his place. The projections, as you can see, the numbers are. He was adrift. Her Haas had seen enough. He leaned in again, his voice colder this time. Arrogant Amerikaner, he said, his contempt clear. Sie denken, Gelder setzt Respekt. Arrogant Americans. They think money replaces respect. This time, Naomi had to set the glass down. The theme of respect stung her personally. She had spent a lifetime navigating rooms like this, where her very presence was seen as a sign of disrespect to the polished surfaces. Sarah, the assistant, sensed the meeting was not just failing, but dying. She looked desperately at Arthur, then at the stone-faced Germans. Her gaze then darted to the corner. She saw Naomi, standing perfectly still, the only calm person in the room. Sarah looked confused, as if wondering why the cleaning lady seemed more composed than the CEO. Arthur, desperate, clicked his slide remote again, but Frau Schmidt held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Herr Coleman, she said, her English clipped and final. This is not productive. She and her Haas stood up in unison, closing their leather briefcases with a soft, definitive click. Arthur stared, his mouth open. Wait, what? We. This meeting cannot continue, Frau Schmidt says, her face like ice. We are leaving. The deal wasn't just collapsing. It was evaporating, and Arthur Coleman was frozen, drowning in the silence of his own humiliation. His reflection in the floor-to-ceiling glass showed a defeated man. The Germans, Frau Schmidt and her Haas, were already halfway to the door, their backs rigid with indignation. Sarah, the assistant, had her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with tears she refused to let fall. Arthur was paralyzed, a statue of failure in his own boardroom. As her Haas passed Naomi's service cart, he muttered one final insult in German to his colleague, a dismissive, was für eine Zeitverschwendung. What a waste of time. That was the line. Naomi, who had been standing by the sideboard, slowly set down the glass water pitcher she was holding. In the dead quiet, the soft clink of glass on wood sounded like a gunshot. It was the only sound in the room, and it made her Haas pause. He and Frau Schmidt turned. Naomi straightened to her full height. The subservient posture she usually held, a defense mechanism learned over years of being invisible, was gone. Her voice was not loud, but it was clear, steady, and resonated with an authority that stunned the room. In perfect academic German, Ein Verschwendung ist es nur, wenn man die Gelegenheit verpasst, zu zuhören. It is only a waste if you miss the opportunity to listen. The room froze. Schmidt and Haas stopped dead, their mouths falling open. Arthur and Sarah stared at the cleaning woman as if she had just sprouted wings. Her Haas, his face a mask of pure shock, took a step back toward her. In cautious English, you speak German? Naomi met his gaze evenly, her calmness a stark contrast to the panic around her. In German fließend. Ich habe in Berlin studiert. Fluently. I studied in Berlin. Arthur Coleman, seeing a lifeline, any lifeline, snapped out of his stupor. He pointed a shaking finger at Naomi, his voice cracking with desperation. You. What did you say? Sit down. Sit down. Translate. Naomi looks at the CEO who has ignored her for years, then at the investors. She calmly walks past her cleaning cart, pulls out the empty translator's chair at the main table, and with perfect poise, sits down. That is the moment. Naomi didn't just walk to that table. She claimed it. The power in that room has officially shifted. If you are still watching and you felt that moment of triumph right along with her, please comment with the number 9 below so I know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I truly recommend you join the Black King family. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss a single video. Your support is what helps us continue to create this great content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's continue. The invisible woman is about to run this meeting. The power in the room, once held by the CEO in the $3,000 suit, had just been claimed by the woman in the $30 uniform. Arthur Coleman sat in stunned silence, watching. His mouth was slightly open. The meeting was no longer his. The Germans, Frau Schmidt and her Haas, were now focused entirely on Naomi. Her abandoned service cart, the symbolic mop, sat in the corner, a stark reminder of the world she had just stepped out of. Arthur, trying to reclaim control, jumped in. Tell them. Tell them the Munich plant is non-negotiable. That's the bottom line. Naomi held up a placating hand, not to him, but for him. She nodded, then turned to the Germans, her posture poised. In German, Herr Coleman understands the cultural significance of the Munich plant. He wants to assure you he is not a liquidator. He would like to propose a solution that honors its legacy while integrating our shared resources. Herr Haas was impressed. He leaned forward, a sharp negotiator's glint in his eye. He tested her, switching to a complex, rapid Bavarian dialect. A fine sentiment, but how does he propose to do that? With American arrogance. Arthur, hearing the change in tone, looked nervous. What? What did he say? Naomi smiled faintly. Without missing a beat, she replied in the exact same dialect, her rhythm flawless, by investing in the local workforce, rather than replacing it. He believes, as you do, that German engineering is the foundation, not an obstacle. Haas's eyebrows shot up. He grinned. The negotiation continued for an hour. It was no longer a presentation. It was a masterclass. When Arthur was blunt, Naomi was diplomatic. When he was vague, she provided specific cultural context. She was no longer just translating words. She was translating intent. Sarah, the assistant, sat off to the side, watching Naomi with undisguised admiration. She wasn't taking notes for Arthur anymore. She was taking notes for herself, studying how Naomi handled the pressure, how she commanded respect without raising her voice. Finally, Frau Schmidt closed her folder and beamed, a genuine warm smile. In English, Herr Coleman. We believe, after this clarification, we have a deal. Arthur let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Excellent. Yes. Frau Schmidt stood and extended her hand across the table. Arthur started to stand, reaching out his own, but her hand was not for him. It was extended directly to Naomi. Naomi, surprised, shook it firmly. As the Germans gathered their things, Herr Haas paused by Naomi's chair. He asked her quietly, in German, "You studied in Berlin. You speak like a native. Why are you serving coffee?" Naomi replied, her voice soft but clear, in German, "Because people only see what they expect to see." The sound of the heavy glass doors closing behind the victorious Germans was followed by a silence far louder than the panic that had started the day. The boardroom was empty, save for the three of them. Arthur Coleman remained slumped in his chair, staring at the signed papers he didn't even touch. Sarah, the assistant, lingered by the door, unsure if she should leave. And Naomi, by sheer muscle memory, stood up and moved instinctively toward her service cart to retrieve the used coffee cups. Wait. Arthur's voice was quiet, almost hoarse. Naomi stopped, her hand hovering over the cart's handle. "You saved that deal," he said, stating the obvious. Naomi nodded. "I'm glad it was successful, sir." He looked up at her, his eyes searching, the arrogance completely gone. "Why are you here, Naomi? In this uniform." Naomi finally looked him in the eye. She gestured to the nostalgic photos on the wall. "Your father built this company. I respect that." Then she looked back at him. "I studied cultural negotiation in Berlin. I graduated top of my class. But when I came home, I was a black woman over 50. People saw this." She gestured to her simple gray uniform. "They didn't see Berlin. They offered me interviews for secretarial pools. Or this." She continued, her voice steady and clear, without a trace of anger, only truth. "I took this job because work is work, Mr. Coleman. I wasn't saving you today. I was protecting the work. The company your father built," she nodded to the photos again, "deserved respect, even if..." She trailed off, but the meaning hung in the air, "even if you didn't." From the doorway, Sarah quietly closed her laptop, giving Naomi her full, respectful attention. Arthur slumps into his chair, the full weight of her words hitting him. "They respected you," he murmured, "more than they respected me." Naomi replied softly, "They respected the language, sir." The rest just followed. Arthur looks at the mess on the table, then at her. I don't know what to say." Naomi simply nods. "Thank you for your time, sir," and she begins to push her cart toward the door. 3 days later, Naomi Washington was called to the CEO's office, But this time, she was asked to come through the front door, not the service elevator. She arrived wearing a simple, professional navy blue dress, her best clothes. The boardroom was no longer a cage of panic. It was bright, filled with executives, board members, and the smiling German delegation, all there for the official signing ceremony. Arthur Coleman, standing at the podium, spotted her. He smiled, a genuine, humble smile, and gestured for her to join him on the stage. In the front row, Sarah, the assistant, saw Naomi and immediately began to applaud, her admiration clear. Arthur tapped the microphone. The room went quiet. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "we are here to sign a historic partnership." He paused, looking down at his notes, then looking up, abandoning them. "But first, I need to correct a great personal and professional failure." A confused murmur went through the room. Arthur gestured to Naomi, who now stood beside him. "This deal almost failed 3 days ago because of my own arrogance. It was saved by the most brilliant mind in this room, a mind I was too blind to see." He told them the whole story. He told them about the missed flight, his own disastrous attempt to speak German, and the insults he hadn't understood. Then, his voice full of sincere respect, he told them about Naomi. "She speaks 5 languages. She studied in Berlin. She is a master of cultural diplomacy," Arthur said. "Brilliance doesn't always wear a power suit." He looked directly at Naomi. "Sometimes it's holding a cleaning cloth. And we are the fools for not seeing it." The room erupted in applause. Frau Schmidt and her Haas gave Naomi a standing ovation, raising their glasses to her. Arthur picked up an envelope from the podium. "This is your new contract, Naomi," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Director of International Cultural Relations. Starting today." Naomi took the contract, her hands shaking just slightly. She looked at Arthur, who nodded, his eyes conveying the respect she had earned. "Thank you," she whispered. He shook his head. "Thank you, Naomi." Naomi steps up to the microphone, her new title on the placard. "Danke," she says to the Germans, who cheer. She looks out at the room, no longer invisible. "Let's get to work." The silence in the boardroom, once filled with panic, was finally replaced by the quiet sound of respect. It serves as a profound reminder that brilliance doesn't always wear a power suit. True value is often hidden in the places we expect it least. When we look past the uniform and truly see the person, we unlock a world of understanding. If this story touched your heart, perhaps consider sharing that warmth and a little respect with those who often go unseen.